The answer is no. You don't need that engineering background. Does it help? Yes, but it's not what makes a difference.
Well, thank you so much, Diego, for your time today. Really appreciate it. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks so much for inviting me. So, hello, everyone. My name is Diego Granados, and I'm currently a product manager at Microsoft. Originally, I am from Mexico, Mexico City. I studied electric engineering, but I actually never worked as an engineer. I worked for 5 years as a business intelligence consultant in a small firm in Mexico. So, it was a little bit of a mix between working with data and working with customers. And that was really exciting. But consulting life was not really for me. I wanted to know what happens after we turn in the project. Once we give the data and the results to the customer, what happens next? But coming from an engineering background and working with data, I realized that I needed to enhance a little bit more on my business skills. And so that's when I decided to come to the US and study my MBA at Duke University. And for my internship and full-time job, I became a product manager at Cisco, where I was working on not very traditional Cisco things, so no routers or switches, and I was more in charge of a product that was about tracking devices over the network. So think of something like adding an RFID tag to a wheelchair and then tracking it through the hospital, and if it gets outside of the hospital and doesn't come back, get alerted. It was super interesting, but in my mind, I wanted to continue down that path of cloud, software, mobile labs, and I knew that Cisco was not the place where I could grow in those skills. So after looking for a different job, I joined Microsoft to do something similar in the sense that a mobile app, web application. But I was surprised that after a month and a half, I went through a reorg. And I switched from building mobile apps and web into AI and machine learning. So it was a new company for me, new place moving from California to Seattle, but also a new field for me to learn about machine learning, which is pretty awesome. And yeah, now I'm really excited to be here interviewing with you, and hopefully everyone can learn from this video.
So in Microsoft, can you tell me a little bit about like how you got into the company? Like, was there an application process? Like, what did the interview process look like? Obviously, you can share whatever you can share. Things that you can't share, you don't have to.
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing that I did when I was starting to recruit was, of course, focus on my resume. I wanted to make sure that the relevant roles or the relevant things that I had experience at Cisco and MBA and pre-MBA were tailored towards not only product management, but also the job posting at the time for Microsoft. And so, number one, I made sure that my resume was okay. But getting the resume was not enough, so I reached out to some alums and I got the referral. But I still, for a couple of months, I didn't hear back anything at all from Microsoft in general to a few roles that I applied. So then I tried to step up my game and said, okay, what's the next step? And then I went into networking. And so this was not only networking with, alums from Duke, but it was, let me start reaching out. Let me find out who's, hiring and who on the team can I, reach out to. So based on keywords from the job description, I started looking on LinkedIn, reach out to a ton of people. And to my surprise, and just one of the things that I really like about Microsoft is that ever since I was networking, I reached out to maybe 20, 25 people, and at least 16, 17 of them actually, replied to my message, and we had a phone call, and I saw the excitement that everybody had about Microsoft. And they helped me on the process, whether it was through another referral or trying to put me in contact with a team that was hiring, or simply other product managers inside Microsoft, which, by the way, let me just make a small parenthesis here. Microsoft calls their product managers program managers. So if anybody's looking for product management, you may not find it, but we're actually called program managers at Microsoft, but we are product managers. So that's, a little bit of the things that I did to get into Microsoft. Now, the interview process. I think it's pretty standard, whether you are coming for undergrad or MBA internship or even full-time. I think it's a very similar process. There's just one difference. Typically it's 2 rounds of interviews. First round typically will be a phone call, anywhere between half an hour to 1 hour, and can be pretty standard product management interview, behaviorals, and if time permits, a product case question. But like I said, could be half an hour or 1 hour. The second round is the big difference depending on whether you're doing an internship or coming from MBA or a full-time. And the difference is that if you're coming from MBA or undergrad through university recruitment programs, you'll be put in a pool of candidates. And so you don't know exactly which team you're interviewing with. And once you get the offer, it will depend on different factors on which team you are placed. The difference is that if you go in full time, just like I did, you're applying to a specific position, so you know which team you're interviewing with, and you can know who is going to be your interviewer. And about second round, once again, typical product management interview questions, behavioral case questions. Sometimes you can get analytical questions like estimates or strategy questions. So really, there's nothing extraordinary or different about Microsoft. It's just about knowing your case questions, product sense questions, design questions, all that stuff. And again, second round can be anywhere between 3 to 5 interviews, depending on how many people are either volunteering that day to interview or how many people are in the team interviewing you. Last thing that I can say is that in typical circumstances, second round happens on campus. Right now, where everything would be virtual, but in theory, second round can be on campus. You can also experience part of Microsoft's life.
Thank you for that detailed information. Is there a reason why product managers are called program managers instead of product managers at Microsoft?
I believe, outside of Microsoft, taking a step back, I think the term product management is sort of relatively new. I don't want to give a date because I don't remember top of my mind, but it's sort of relatively new in the industry. And there's still plenty of confusion. Like, for instance, there's the term product owner. And product owner comes from the Agile world or the Scrum practices. And product owner is similar yet different to product manager. But some companies call the product owners as product managers or vice versa. I believe Microsoft used to have program managers in the traditional sense of a program management, where it was more about a sort of matrix project management where somebody would be in charge of the projects and working with all these different stakeholders. And slowly the role evolved into becoming a product manager. But I just think they never actually updated the name.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's a historic thing, and I don't know if they will update it, but that's why we're called program managers.
Yeah, no, that was just a silly question, I think. Kind of shifting gears a little bit. So you said you work as a product manager, which is basically program manager in Microsoft. And can you tell me a little bit about like what you do there?
Yeah. So like I said at the beginning, I work in AI and machine learning. And what does that mean? I work with a team, and we're in charge of developing AI models that will surface in different Microsoft products. In this case, I can talk about the one that is already out there. So we work with an app, a Microsoft app called Customer Insights, where customers ingest all their data, and then they can do a bunch of analytics or exporting into different, cloud systems, dynamic products. And what we do with my team is we create, like I said, different AI models to do predictions based on the data, and the customers will experience that model through customer insights. So think of, I'm a customer, I ingest all my data, then I want to run a prediction like a churn prediction. Like I said, it's the one that we already have out there in the market. And so we'll do it in a very simple way. We'll do an out-of-box model, which means that for you, the customer, you don't need to be a data scientist, you don't need to be an expert in AI, and we'll produce those predictions for you. So my job as a product manager is to understand the customers, what's the need, once they ingest their data, like what are they trying to solve, what's their problems. I bring that back, and I also need to understand my internal customer, which is Customer Insights, the other application, to understand also how they're planning to consume the models and how they're planning, like are we going to deploy those models. And so I work with my team of data scientists and engineers to figure out how are we going to build these models? How are we going to deploy them? How can we improve it? How can we make it from the backend perspective? How can we make it the best model for our customers to consume?
I would assume you work a lot with the customers. and the internal customers as well. Do you also work a lot with the engineers at Microsoft?
Yeah, absolutely. I work with my day to day, so to speak, because it depends on the week, depends on the stage of the
Sure.
features, right? But I work with data scientists a lot. I work with engineers on my team. I also work with engineers on the other product team. So it's a pretty diverse in the sense that it's not just my own small engineering squad. It's actually I need to coordinate different engineering teams to make sure that all the models we're deploying, all the changes we're doing are actually feasible, and that we're all working in parallel to get to that final launch date and restart the development cycle. But yes, I work every day with engineering and data scientists.
I know you mentioned that you do have an engineering like background, and you also worked as a product manager before. But just based on your experience, do you think an engineering background is a must to become a product manager?
That is one of the probably most frequently asked questions about product management. The answer is no. You don't need that engineering background. Does it help? Yes, but it's not what makes a difference. The only caveat that I'll add to that is that some companies actually do prefer that you have a computer science background. Is not the case of Microsoft. And why is that? So companies like Microsoft, in my role, in my case, I have some of my fellow PMs who work with me don't have that engineering background, and that's very okay. But in general, you could be a PM at Microsoft and be more focused on the business side, and so therefore the CS background or engineering background may not be required or preferred. You might have some very maybe you work in Azure or some other parts of Microsoft that are super technical, and they prefer somebody with a more technical background.
Mm-hmm.
In general, becoming a product manager, the soft skills are something that is going to take you really far. Soft skills like working cross-functionally or dealing with ambiguity, leading without influence, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But the technical skills you can learn on the job. So if there's something that you don't know, as long as you like reading about technology and keeping yourself updated, you can take courses, you can do a master's degree, you can do whatever you want. But no, you don't need to be an engineer. Like I said, depending on the companies, and companies do actually prefer
Yep.
that. But to be a PM, you don't need to be an engineer.
That was one of the questions I get asked a lot, and I asked a lot when I was looking for a job before as well. So, thought that I would ask. So you mentioned about there were a big org change when you first joined. Like I would assume that you had a learning curve, and then if there was a learning curve, like how did you handle it? How did you?
Yeah, the first 30 or 60 days of a product manager, maybe even extended to the first 90 days of any product manager, you're gonna feel useless. Why is that? Because all you can do, like, you can't contribute yet. You're not gonna be day one and doing presentations on the strategy and the vision of the product. You're not going to change the backlog day one. You're not going to make a decision or talk to customers day two. So the first 30, 60, 90 days of a product manager should be about listening, and listening to the team, listening to customers, listening to your boss, listening to other teams around you. And so there's a steep learning curve to just understand what is happening with the product, what is happening in the team, what are the dynamics, what's the culture like, and what's not. That's about the learning curve about the team and of course the company. Then in my case, like you said, I went through a reorg and shifted into AI and machine learning. The learning curve is also on the technical side, so I took advantage of those first 30, 60, 90 days and took a couple of courses on machine learning that were not going to make me an expert in AI and machine learning, but definitely what's going to help me as I was more and more into these meetings with the data scientists to understand more about, their language of machine learning, and also for me to understand as customers were explaining their pain points, really go deep into, okay, this is what I learned in the course. This is what it means. Let me go and ask questions. And so yes, there was a learning curve, and it's a lot about listening to the team, taking courses, and asking a ton of questions.
I feel like, to be honest, it's pretty much the same with all the other roles, not only product management. Like first 30 days of these, like feel useless. whatever role it
Yes.
is. If you're going into a new role, like you feel like, what am I doing? Like, what am I supposed to do this morning? Kind of thing. So everyone's there. Everyone's been in that place. I would love to learn a little bit more about Microsoft culture. We hear a lot about the CEO, and we hear a lot about the company, but I didn't really get a chance to learn about company's culture. Like, what's the work-life balance like? What's the culture like? Would you
Mhm.
mind sharing a little bit?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of, like you said, material out there about Satya and all the changes that he's done. And um, in my view, like when I think of myself thinking about Microsoft as a company, 10 years ago, I always thought about, this big old siloed company where everybody worked on their own and that was it, right? And then things will break and you can imagine this company where nobody talked to each other. And I think that was true to some extent. Like, of course, I was not part of Microsoft and I didn't know more, than just talking to some people. Then Satya became the CEO, and I believe that one of the first things that he, worked on really hard was changing the culture.
Hmm.
And what you see today, and like I was telling before, one thing that I really really like is that team working spirit. It's really not just about a marketing tool to say, hey, we enjoy team working and we like being everybody towards the goal and what's not. It really it's part of the culture, and what that means is that day one, I was, talking to a lot of people. I would reach out and say, hey, can we have a coffee chat? Everybody would be willing to help. Everybody was willing to not only help me as the new guy, but now fast forward to today, I feel empowered and encouraged to just, approach anyone and say, hey, I need help on this. And it's not is not being looked as, oh, I should have the answers. Why am I asking for
Hmm.
help? Or like, oh, I
Hmm.
shouldn't be asking this person.
Yeah, yeah,
It's actually more about, hey, we're here to help everyone and get the projects done and make our customers successful. It's part of the mission, right? Empower everybody in the world to achieve
yep.
more. And it's really something that you really see in the culture of Microsoft. And
Hmm.
about the work-life balance, um, in general, it's a great work-life balance. Like you see people actually caring about others and or rather managers caring about everybody else. And so
Hmm.
that goes all the way from during this whole COVID time to saying, hey, let's block one day where everybody is going to concentrate on their own thing, try to reduce the amount of meetings. Let's make sure that everybody gets a break from meetings to actually do your own thing, catch up on email, on work, whatever it is, but try to avoid meetings. Or managers just constantly talking with all of us and saying, hey, how's everything going? Do you need a break? Take a few days of vacation? Like, just taking care of everybody else. And so that's something that I really like. The work hours, it really depends. It depends more on the person rather on the team. In general, it's classic, 8 hours a day. Some people start later, some people start earlier. And as a product manager, especially when you're launching a product, yes, typically you work once or twice in the weekend, but it's not like every day you stay until 10 p.m. or every weekend
Hmm.
you work. I think
Hmm.
in my year and a half at Microsoft, I worked on weekends, maybe 2 weekends, and that's it. So I would say it's pretty great. And then the last thing that I'll say about the culture and this work-life balance is that Microsoft also encourages you to be yourself.
Hmm.
And that is, be your authentic self and bring your authentic self to work. And so I've got my YouTube channel and people know about it, and people, really support me and encourage me to share it with them. And
Yeah, yeah.
others are very passionate about, organizations and helping others. And so Microsoft helps them with that. The team helps them with it. And so overall, like, it's pretty great. And this is not just a marketing tool to say, hey, Microsoft is great, but I really have
Yeah.
experienced it through a year and a half here.
Gotcha. So, what do you like the most, and what do you like the least, being a product manager at Microsoft?
The thing that I like the most is um, part of that culture of team working, but also the sense of ownership. Like, I have so much ownership of the product or the features that I manage that it could go borderline scary, meaning I, make decisions. I feel the weight of those decisions, and the team trusts me on those decisions, and I trust the team on whether it's the research team, the engineering team, the data science team. And so I think that's really cool for a product manager because you do get that ownership. And as a part that, I feel could be improved, or the thing that I don't like so much about being a product manager is that Microsoft being a large organization, sometimes you have to deal with, way too many people to make a decision. Not every decision, but major decisions is you need to keep involving more and
Oh
more and
yeah,
more. And so, but that's just natural to any big organization.
for sure. Yeah. Last question is advice for those who want to join Microsoft or who want to break into product management.
Yeah, I think it's don't just rely on your resume. Your resume is just one step or one part of it. Make your networking, make sure that if you want to join Microsoft, you learn about the culture, you talk to employees, you really understand what Microsoft stands for. Do your research. That's the advice for the Microsoft side. And for the product management, if you have previous experience, that's awesome. If you come from an engineering background, develop those business skills. If you don't come from an engineering background, you don't have to be technical, but knowing technical is really good. And it's about transferable skills and side projects. It's not just about putting in your resume that you work with engineering. It's about saying, hey, I actually built a project as a product manager. You don't have to launch anything into the market. You can do your research, post it on LinkedIn, post it on social media, show that you can think as a product manager. That would be my advice to join Microsoft and become a product manager.
Yeah. And one last thing, you did mention about it, but tell me a little bit about your YouTube channel.
Yeah, absolutely. So for everybody out there who doesn't know me, I also have a YouTube channel where I post things about product management, where I post things about the interview process for PM in general. And I also talk to other PMs to very specifically tell us about here's exactly what it means to be a PM at this different company. So go and check it out. You can find it. My name, PM Diego Granados. Any comments, any questions, I'm happy to answer there.
Awesome. Yeah. If you're looking for a product management role, check out Diego's YouTube channel. It's a great resource for you. Thank you so much again for today. I would assume that everyone got valuable lesson from today's content. Thank you so much,
Yeah, no,
Diego.
absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me, and thanks everyone.
Yeah, awesome.